letting him define who you are.
Yeah.
So it's living out who he is and who he says you are. Those two things is how to live the Christian life. So I guess the first three really are becoming truly his and founded in the Lord. The next one is living the life yourself. And then the last two are really your connection with the Lord and his church. So they follow a natural sequence.
His will, his dream.
Yeah.
Say hello to our viewers.
Who is it?
Jeremy, our viewers.
Our viewers. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another special edition of Sojourners for Tuesday night. Tonight we are at a different campus again. But we're in for a good night. We're going to be continuing on our 7 pillars. So if you have any questions, you can see it on the screen where you can type in your little questions or comments or whatever.
And we hope to not ignore you.
And we'll try our best to get to those. But sit back, relax, enjoy the night, remote. Rosie, if you're watching, we say hello.
Kelly's watching. Hi, Kelly.
Hey, Kelly.
Hello, Kelly.
We love you.
I did actually look for the microphone thing attachment. They didn't have any at JB Hi-Fi.
Oh, okay.
It looks like you'd have to get one that clips onto people's so that might be a bit weird to put
So
in.
we have like a proper interview.
All the
It's
ones
just
come
that
out
it's
from the ears
actually-
and then
I
come
don't-
down the-
Have any of you actually tried listening back to them? It's
I don't
really,
use Facebook.
it can be really difficult. It's like half the time you can't hear what anyone's saying.
Really?
Do you think it's still
Yeah.
worthwhile filming?
It is because you do
I understand.
yeah,
it.
people
I
do.
was like, oh, it works for me.
But I turn it up. But it's hard to do it sometimes.
Maybe
Maybe
plug
I
it
have a
into a
strong
speaker.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We just get one of those headsets and then pass it around each time someone's talking.
We just have like
Or-
15
or it's
headsets.
just like
I'm sorry, I didn't
or
mean
it's
to-
just to be comfortable with the phone right next to you.
Well, we could just get a decent mic and a lead to it. It's just a specialist AV store we have.
Or probably we could speak louder so that people can hear what you're saying.
Let's speak louder.
Yeah.
We
Let's
can
make
try.
that a break.
That probably will work. I think.
It's actually a really easy solution.
Speaking louder, you'd be.
It's a bit cheaper, you know.
No, that's not really important, but why don't we just get a really long mic and attach it to the phone and then just pass it around?
Or just have it hanging off the roof. I like that idea.
Either or, we'll look into it.
Yeah.
Chris will look into it. Yeah,
Okay.
volunteers.
Anyway, the Jeremy did a good job of sharing the first one. Like what I want is the basic goal of going through these things is that you would know your foundations and you know what you're on about, and you know the significance of these things, and you would realise how special it is that you have clarity on them, the benefits to your own life, but also then what you have to communicate to a church that's largely lost so many of these.
Yeah.
So if I go through the 7, let's go through the 7 and put them in reverse. Let's talk about what is commonly held on all 7, and you'll see the loss. And then you see the blessing in each of your own lives as it have impacted your lives. Then you'll get the significance of them. You go, oh, these are very precious things.
Oh, for sure.
These are
yeah.
foundational, that's for
Yeah.
sure. Like there's such a significant and powerful change that happens in a person's life on all of these things.
Yeah.
And there's a significant loss if these things are lost for a person. Either a fruitful life, or a horrible life, or a full salvation. So let's. What are the 7 in a decent order, and then let's look at each one in reverse, and then we can finish the rest of them off. How's that?
Yeah. So the first one is new birth, and second is the assurance and discipleship,
Yep.
and then
Verse 3.
continue. So then with the new birth, currently with many Christian circles and basically the modern church, what do you say, the modern church, it isn't a new birth. It isn't a birth. Like it isn't natural. It isn't a new DNA. It isn't a new life. It isn't a new nature. It isn't the new birth. So we can't say the new birth. They would call it being born again, but that's just, they don't even think born. They don't think born. because basically not born in any way you can feel because you or know because there is no evidence.
So thus the no birth becomes an irrelevant word, because what they're trying to do is convince a person there's a change of status in their relationship with God without the evidence of a changed heart.
That's it. Yeah, just believe it by faith, but there's no evidence. There's no way you can know. Yeah. And basically the only evidence they give is write it down on a card somewhere and tell that date to the devil, the day that you prayed the prayer. But there's no solid evidence besides that. And so naturally people start doubting whether or not they're saved, and they should doubt. And, the altar call comes and it's like, maybe I should raise my hand again. You get repeaters at altar calls. Or you get people who brainwash themselves and say, no, I really am saved, and the devil needs to stop lying to me. And then they go hardcore.
That's actually, it's the pastor's job now.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
The pastor's yeah. So, and it's just, there's no visible life change, and the Christian life is difficult and hard. And if you come from a broken background, it doesn't work. You end up doing a cycle and spinning, or just not doing it, leaving forever. If you have a good background with good parents, you can survive in a church and you can stay there forever. But there's no difference between you and the world when it comes to your heart. And so you just are a cleaned up version of people. And so it's not powerful to change anybody. And the world hates it. The world sees through it. And it becomes very hard to share the gospel with people because nothing's changed in your life. So where's the motivation for you to share with anybody? And so then when the pastor says you really need to share the gospel, it's because people need to get born again like you're born again. It's like, well, I don't really have, what do I have except church? Okay, so I can invite people to church. And what do I have to offer people? It becomes about the group, but it becomes about the community. It doesn't become about Christ. So,
Anybody want to add to that?
It's quite comprehensive.
No chance. That was good, Mel.
Yeah.
Let's see if there's something that she did leave out. I don't think there was. Yeah, that's good. Hey?
no, sorry, that's probably my most passionate pillar. I mean, the pillar I'm most passionate about. So.
Yeah, that one collapses. It's nothing less standing. That's very true. Yes. And you can see how they hold together, can't you? Because assurance, with biblical assurance, it's probably one that you probably least thought through on, because you think, if you're saved, you're saved. But the full revealing that you are saved does cause a person to live very, very differently. They certainly live for the things of eternity a lot more. They're more willing to live a life of reckless abandon, very much along the lines of what in Hebrews it talks about how people joyfully accepted the confiscation of their property. Now, I don't know if you've had someone walk in and repossess everything you own and take back the title of your house. Anyone here? No, but how would you feel if they did do that?
Quite well, after I kill them.
But to joyfully accept is a ridiculous term. And it says it was because that they knew that they had more better and lasting possessions.
Wow.
And so there's someone that's very, very sure on their own destiny and where they really belong and where their home is. And the clearer you have a revelation, the clearer you ensure you are of your own salvation, the clearer the sureness of heaven and the reality of eternity. And it's far easier to get a better perspective on life as this life tries to tyrannise you and connect you to everything of it in this world. So I think that's its strength, being able to access the promises and have a sure foundation. You know how most people deal with identity? When the devil says, you're just a failure, you just can't do anything right, you know what I mean? And actually nobody really likes you, you know what I mean? So most people just, it's not true. It's not true because I am loved. I am. All right?
And I don't know why.
I have no idea why. I don't believe you. I don't believe you, and you can keep saying it, and gradually I'll start to believe you. But to have something rock solid, foundational, that doesn't shift, absolute truth, staked in history, staked in blood, a rock solid covenant where you know that there is a guarantee. There's a deposit guaranteeing what is to come. There's a seal within your soul that you are in a covenant. And on the basis of covenant and the exchange of covenant, you can then combat the devil's lies. I think it's very powerful. Yeah. So there's that one.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to relational discipleship, how does the church tend to do that? And what's the fruit of that?
Modern day, in the modern day church, discipleship tends to be like a mentor relationship where you've got a younger Christian or somebody who's just come to the Lord, an older, more mature Christian, and you meet up on maybe a semi-regular basis to a regular basis, scheduled over coffee or over a meal, maybe once a week or once a fortnight.
Snake, that almost sounds like what I do. Anyway, keep going.
But like,
Well, yours is over tea though. It's different.
Over tea. That's a big point. Anyway, keep going.
it's like, it's because I've had both.
Good tea.
It's like, and so you've got like this connection, but often there's like no real like life on life connection where the person really gets underneath all the issues, and you'd find that like, especially because a lot of Christians in the modern day church haven't dealt with their own stuff or identity, you've kind of got like this sort of blind leading the blind around. It's
I remember my first sort of experience of discipleship was with a youth leader that was slightly older than me, and she'd come through to the Lord on pretty much the same day as me, so we were very on par in terms of maturity. And it was you probably have similar experiences, but it was very friendship based and very like, we'll have sleepovers, we'll have coffee, like, just very.
It was not very missional.
No.
So it sounds like
Self-based.
it was fellowship based on fellowship on the basis of relational need, was it?
Yeah.
Checks out.
When it comes to in a mega church of 1,000 people, how many? When it comes to even mentoring relationships, was still a form of discipleship.
Yeah.
How many people do you think would be involved in willing to mentor a younger person out of 1,000 people?
Very few, 2%. Yeah.
Well, it would depend on what their definition of mentoring someone
Or
would
even
be.
catching up with a person once a week.
There'd be like very few people who are actually willing to
Do that.
Yeah.
It's too costly.
Too costly, or they might even feel like they're.
Depending on the church, it'd be. I can imagine it being between 2 and 10 people willing to do that. And so the fact that you had someone that was willing, I think, wow, that's good, And churches where it's more than 2 or 10 has usually had some influence of somebody that's a strong relational disciple, and it tends to diffuse and influence things.
Yeah. It'd be very like data driven as well. Like, I remember in youth leadership, there would be, I think at one stage there was even like a spreadsheet or some sort of really data driven, like this leader's got this amount of kids and stuff.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, I think it was.
I think that was common knowledge.
They keep score.
I'm pretty sure. I don't know if it was keeping score, but just making sure every kid was covered, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And the ratio was like 20 kids to one person.
Excuse me.
Yeah. It's their orphanage ratios,
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's mostly due to the fact that, like, the understanding of, because like as Mel was sort of talking about with understanding the new birth, the understanding of those things is very much lost. So in one sense, you can look at that and someone genuinely does believe that, no, I'm actually born again because someone told me these things and I really trust the person that told me that. So to them, that's actually all the truth they know.
So humans tell them they say rather than God tells them they say.
And they would sort of believe that. So in the same way, I think like with relational discipleship, people would genuinely understand the part of, I see you once every week or however many times, and we sit and I tell you how my week has been, and you give me advice on how I can do the next week better. And like, you never really have to know anything personal about yourself. I never have to get vulnerable with you. I never have to actually be open to the point where it's like you really know who I am. But again, like to most people, that's the definition of what relational discipleship is, because it's not in a group. It is them meeting one-on-one with somebody else. But it's just how they sort of learn to understand things means that that's perfectly normal and that's perfectly okay. Which would be, I would imagine most church people would do that because that's what I guess they know, and that's what's
So
normal.
they do have a model of relational discipleship. There's an awful lot of different definitions that fit under that.
That's correct. So it's however one, like you could have a strong leader that would define it a certain way, and therefore people around underneath that leadership, they then define it that way.
Yep.
And then so that's how it sort of keeps going around. So you could have one that's actually a good model of relational discipleship, and that in the same way sort of spreads down to everybody else, and you sort of create a very healthy way of discipleship that people sort of build upon. Or you could have one where it's, let's say it's bad, but it's not really a proper model of what relational discipleship looks like, and that also has the same effect. It would just keep spreading down, and people sort of still hold on to that as the way of life because that's all they know.
Yeah. I think too, in the modern church, the difficulty with relational discipleship is the relational dynamics of discipleship are usually counter. They clash with the institutional model of the church in how the church wants to do church. It wants to be program based rather than relational based, and it wants to be organisationally strong rather than relationally strong. It's very hard to be both because you're investing in one or you're investing in the other. It's very hard to invest in both. And as you know, you're just flat out attending in one situation. You have no time really for catching up, except when you're on the job in a ministry team. And so that's the difficulty. And institutional churches tend to be vision-based churches. They're almost always vision-based churches. So the vision of the pastor is usually never relational discipleship, because if it was, he would lose his authority. Why would he lose his authority?
Because then the authority would come down to the relationships in the individuals in the church. You lose the hierarchy.
It becomes respect-driven rather than hierarchical-driven. And therefore it will break down. And it needs authority to be
the pastor.
The institutional authority rather than anything else.
And I think that's the point you mentioned, is like one of those hard things where most places would be vision driven, as in one guy would come in with his vision, that becomes the vision of everybody else, and then the next guy comes in with his vision, and that's the new vision that we're going with now, and then the third guy comes in and says,
he's the guy. Like, he's the guy. So he's the one that God said to us that he's gonna.
So it's like, where is it that you're going? Well, we're going here. For how long? Well, this is what I want my life to be like, because someone told me this is what I need to do. So it's that difficult. There's like never really any thought to, like when you sort of describe relational discipleship, like I would believe most people weren't actually given the thought to what that's like. It's someone told them this is what it's like, and therefore they do that.
So you only know about it and appreciate it if you've actually been raised in it.
That's correct.
Then you see its value. Simple as that.
That's true.
Otherwise, it's just a definitional word, a discussion in a life group. You know what I mean?
That's right. And then whatever you agree upon, that's what you then do. And that becomes the norm.
Well, no, it's a discussion. Don't do anything about it. It's just discussion. You know what I mean?
Well, it's usually like, well, we'll catch up for coffee. Yeah, we should do that.
Every 2 weeks works for you. That works for me.
Done.
Only at like Blackboard though.
It is very much fellowship based. And relational discipleship can be elevated to the point of an idol as well, because the person needs to be discipled to Christ so that they become strong in the Lord. You want people to last the journey, not to be reliant upon you.
That's true.
Because that's kind of the other thing, is that sometimes there's like a lack of understanding of the new birth and a lack of understanding of how to disciple someone to Christ. So you kind of get like, I like how Mike Wells talks about like going to whacking meetings. So
That's
basically,
great, eh?
you visualize a wooden board.
On my deck netter like that.
Yeah, a wooden board and a nail, and basically it'd be like you go to this person and they will whack you, and you'll go deep into Christ. But then you'll pop back out again and you need to go get whacked again, rather than being like a screw, being like going down into Christ in a methodical way. But that kind of like describes what it was like.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, any carpenter will tell you actually it's not the screw that's the problem, or it's the rot in the timbers underneath that's the problem. You need a bigger screw, stronger screw, deeper. Still works, I guess. So yes, very much so. And so seeing discipled to Christ, and the truth is also in strength of relational discipleship is a lot of people, most people get saved along that journey. How about for some of you, if you're in church and you thought you were saved, and perhaps you were saved, but you're just really struggling in your walk, or you weren't saved, and often you realise, I've just come alive so much so that I'm pretty sure I just got saved, because these are all the symptoms of the new birth. Like Jeremy last week was sort of like, that's the clearest portrait you'll get of the new birth inside a heart of a good person going to church. You see what I'm saying? It's the new birth is the same in its impact upon a human heart. When you take away the circumstance, it's not a bad person becoming a better person, a good person. It's this beautiful change of the affections, the desires,
for the first time.
And so that was the new birth. So here you were in church, you come into discipleship, and then you experience the new birth. Now that's true for a lot of people in church, and even outside of church. They're in an awakening. Usually it's a weak awakening, and it gets stronger, and then bang, they can get saved and they'll kick on. And so discipleship is just that necessary framework. Here's the hardest question you'll ever find: when were the disciples truly saved?
Jesus died?
Yeah, but then why was he referring to them as his before that? It's like, that'll mess with you, won't it?
Yeah.
Oh, forget slip, Chris.
Chris, let's just appreciate Chris's expression right now.
Resurrection, he breathed on him and said, "Receive the Holy Spirit." Was that when they were saved? But they're still talking about them being his
Well,
before
we knew
then.
for sure when they were baptized in the Spirit.
That's
absolutely, you know what I mean? We can have some time frames. Baptized in the Spirit, definitely they know the Lord. They're born of Christ.
That's Mel wanting to absolutely make sure, I think.
Yeah.
But
They are buried.
But it seems to be but the fact is as soon as he called them, they followed him. But you look at their minds and their understanding, they couldn't get on his page at all the whole way through. He was there, they were going there.
Even for Peter, like right at the very end was, I feel like, when he really took things seriously. You know.
He tasted a bit of failure.
Yeah.
And yet the Lord referred to them as his disciples. He sent them out preaching. They were baptizing. You belong to me, Lord. I would keep the ones that you have given me. I just lost the one, but you never really gave them to me anyway. But the point is that he drew them into discipleship to himself. And some people's lives are sort of like that. They find it very hard to work out at what point they got saved. But it's like, now I know the sun is shining. and it's okay as long as the sun is shining.
Yeah, it's true.
So now you can see you see the difference with the modern church with the gospel. If that pillar collapses, there's nothing left standing.
Yeah.
With discipleship, that's how a lot of people get saved and they grow quick. I mean, Mel, as you know, and a lot of you that are in close discipleship, it just affects every area of your life, and there's a rapid growth in every area of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And you've just got that stability and that support as well. So it just, what would you be if it was taken away? You'd still be walking with the Lord, but you'd just grow at about a fifth of the pace, probably.
Yeah.
Countless mistakes, you reckon?
That's true.
Yeah.
And then not have that to give to someone else. Like if you're growing so slowly, someone else needs the truth that you would have learned if you did it God's way.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yep.
That person misses out as well.
Oh yeah, the roll-on effects are huge. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, like this. Yeah.
That's right. And so we've mentioned about assurance, and then the other one is on let's say identity. Now, all of you who've been involved in church life a lot, now that you've come to understand identity, you look back and what do you see? If you've been involved in platform ministry, you've been involved in being on staff in a church or close to staff on a church, or involved in teams in working in big churches or even smaller churches, you see ambition. What do you see?
Selfish ambition, a desire for prominence, desire for recognition.
Yeah.
For acceptance as well, working hard for acceptance and belonging.
Acceptance, yeah. Or if you're gifted, performing. Yeah. Yeah. Or staying on the fringe. And dealing with things that way. But nevertheless, you just see this, just a bleeding mess of rejection issues and identity issues, and it's all unresolved, and it just corrupts motives to the point you think, is anything pure?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah. And the difficulty is that at the moment, because it's such a hot topic in the whole world, like even if you're not in Christian circles, you can talk about identity with anybody. Yeah, and it is the hot topic now, and people want to talk about it. And so then, of course, at church, it's a popular topic and it's taught on a lot.
It is. It's becoming very popular.
It's becoming the fad. And, I mean, well, it has been the fad for years, and people focus on it a lot. And then what happens is at church that people focus on that a lot, and they ignore rebellion, they ignore sin, and so then what happens is basically the worship of self. And they want to get healing, but the healing, it can't come without repentance. Or,
It's only so far.
Yeah.
There's only a self-absorbed person can only go so far with identity.
Yeah. Because I guess you also looking for healing from the thing that makes you part of that. Do you know what I mean? Like the rebellion is what, someone else's rebellion is what caused your identity mess in the first place.
Yeah, big thing.
Yeah. So if you don't take that out as well at the same time, then you're just
true.
Back
in our generation, before identity teaching was around at all, there was inner healing of the emotions, and there were countless books and countless seminars and countless conferences set up for that very purpose, and people would flock to them in the hope of finding healing, and they always thought they gained something from it, but usually what they gained was more information, more understanding, but they didn't gain wholeness. They just didn't get to the issues, the real issues in their life.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I can sort of relate to, in the sense that it's sort of easy to learn a lot of things that actually help you make a lot of informed decisions, but they never sort of get rid of the underlying issue that makes you think or do or understand or process things. It's like you now just have a lot of information to consider in your processing, but the final end of that processing is essentially the same. It just takes you longer to get there simply because you have a lot of information to process before you reach the inevitable decision that you would have reached 3 years ago with less information. So it's, I think what Paul sort of mentioned at the start is, it's like when I was thinking about this energy during the week, it's always going to be hard, like when it comes to identity, to deal with that in a way that's going to be a lasting resolve of your issue. So you'll be able to get away with it for a period of 6 months because the devil says, hey, you're worthless. And so, no, thank you. People love me. I'm lovable. I mean a lot to people. You can get away with that for a period of time until you're like, you know what? Like, I walked in that room and that person didn't say hi to me.
Oh, come on.
And suddenly it's like, oh, maybe I'm not, you know. But it's like it sort of starts to wear on you. So, but if you have like the lasting truth of genuinely knowing who you are, it's not just based on your emotions. It's not based on how the day is going. It's not based on the information that you have of what you think is right. It is actually something that does last. It's no longer like like something that's just there for a certain period of time until it wears out, but it's something that's actually lasts you a lifetime because you know who you truly are, and you know the person that says who you are. So it's no longer dependent on people. So it becomes less about gathering information, but more about just knowing the truth and who says those things about you.
You know how we often communicate to other people. You have twin issues. One is your heart, and basically you've got your own personal identity issues. You've got your own personality, and you've got a fallen, broken, selfish, rebellious heart. Mix all those together, and it goes somewhere. It does something, and it goes to judgment. Well, breaking that down, you end up with these. There's always twin issues, one playing against the other. And when it comes to identity, you've got an issue of the heart and an issue of the mind. You've got lies, and you've got the selfish, proud heart of the fallen nature. And there's so many ties between them. One affects the other. You can't deal with one without dealing with the other. So you can't deal with identity without a surrendered heart that's accessing the life of Christ. And you can't flourish in that unless you're dealing with the lies that are still happening in your mind, even though you have that. You need both. And so you can't deal with identity without remaining in a flourishing state with the Lord. Because try it sometime.
That's true.
So and learning to do that, and the other thing is, when it comes to living out of the life of Christ within your soul, there are some teachers that have really good abiding life teaching, but there's not many of them usually. They don't, normally, because in larger churches they like to balance out their messages so that they, how can I put it? They've usually got a struggling congregation where the parents are so flat out and dealing with so many life issues that pretty well when they come to Sunday, all they want is what?
Encouragement.
Encouragement. Encouragement. Positive word, encouragement, and so they want that to be fed to them. They want to receive encouragement, and the men are normally weak and abdicating. Again, the stronger the pastor, then the weaker the family, the weaker the man. And so you get this. They then have to balance out what they preach. They put a spectrum on it, and so they will have a message on the abiding life and how to live the Christian life. But it normally will be one message or two messages in a year, and they won't repeat it for 2 years. So they don't have enough strength and yet people have to live, if their hearts aren't thriving with the God, great, give them the encouragement every week. It's like blowing up a balloon that's got a hole in it. It's just like, it's gone down again. It's gone down again.
You're beautiful, you're loved, remember who you are. Next week, don't you know you're beautiful? And, repeating the encouraging affirmations, which of course in Christ, there is that identity there, but living in Him is necessary. Like you said, it's both. So often there's an overemphasis on the positive words and the positive affirmation.
And a lot of people don't know there's access to the life of Christ and how to get it and how critical it is. They don't know that's the key to a thriving life. They don't know that it's accessible to them. They're born and raised under performance.
Yeah.
And has anybody been in a system where they're born and raised under performance? And what's it like? What?
Is that a yes?
Yeah.
That was like,
Not me.
okay, that's fine. What was it like? I wasn't born and raised under it.
What was it like?
Did anybody tell you there was a life that could come into you, and it will do the changing, and it will do the transforming, and it will be a life that comes into you that animates everything and changes everything?
No. And if I ever did hear anything that came close to that, I would rearrange it in my brain to be like, okay, so what you're saying is I need to do this more and I try a bit harder, and then God is going to come and he's going to help me and we're going to walk together. But first, I really need to try very, very hard.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You're only in one team, so you need to be in at least 3 teams.
Yeah, that would
what
be
she's
it.
describing is the human condition. That's
Yeah.
not just raised in church, it's the human condition.
Yeah.
And so,
First, I need to do this. Yeah.
yeah, it's a performance.
Otherwise,
based.
it's not earned. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
You don't want something that's not earned. You've got to earn the love of God.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, accessing the life of Christ, once you realise how precious it is and how much it changes things, then you know how much you need it every day. Then it becomes, you can access it through humility, faith, and dependence. Dependence comes from realising this is great, it changes everything, I need to live out of this, and today I can. So the secret place then becomes a portal to grace. Now, you can tell people that understand that because the secret place is a portal to grace, and they access it and treat it that way.
Yeah.
Now, and if somebody hasn't really discovered to live that way, then the secret place, they call it quiet time, is they would read their Bible maybe once a week so they don't feel too guilty. Oh, I haven't read that for so long, I should do that. You know what I mean? And how long since you read? You know, like, oh, I feel bad, I haven't read my Bible for a while. I haven't read my Bible. It's always I read the Bible. It's like, oh yeah, I'm going to go visit this person. I'm standing at the door, stood at the door for half an hour, went away. Go see them again, go to stand at the door, walk away. Did you ever knock on the door, go in the door and talk to that person? That's what we're talking about, you know what I mean?
It, like when they say spend time with the Lord, or when they say read my Bible.
There's a difference. You know what I mean? And the read my Bible is standing at the door and walking away without even being fed. So that is a huge thing. And in your discipleship, it's just one thing for the person to get so that they can learn to feed themselves.
That's really good.
Yeah. So that's pretty critical. So you can see how all these things hold together really well.
And they need to be explicitly taught to people too. Like when it comes to our disciples and that kind of thing. You have to actually speak about it, teach it.
Yeah, that's right. And that's what you guys, it's on the strength of you guys understanding these things and then imparting them and spreading them and understanding these things being, what's the word? Are they active? It's a fruit of this active. Because you're not just trying to have people adhere to a belief system or principles. You want the benefits of these things in people's lives because they change so quickly, you know.
And that's like, so it's not like, oh, you believe these things because you're here, and when you're no longer around, you can believe whatever you want.
Change. Go with the flow of what you're under.
It's more actually understanding, are these things real in your life? And if they are, it doesn't really matter where you end up. It's like,
they go with you.
So I think that's the significance in that, actually understanding that all of this has to be real within a person, and because it won't be any different to what any church would do, having a strong leader that says this and that. So it's the same thing. It's just different information, and when that person's no longer around, you can then decide what you want to do after that, or what the next person's going to tell you. But it's like when you have it real within your heart, it becomes your way of life. It's how you live. It's what you do. So it's think that's the importance of understanding these things.
And as they get into your life, as they build into your life, and life gets more of a hold of you and starts to be a stronger dynamic inside your soul, then inevitably it comes to this place where you want to live for him and no longer for yourself.
Yeah.
You're going to go a self-absorbed person can only go so far.
Yeah.
About there, I think it is. And until they embrace his purposes in the world. And I guess it's saying, God, you are the one who defines me, but also your will is my will. I'm not going to, what is your will for me? You know what I mean? What is your will for me? That is the definition of tormenting yourself, making God fit into your bubble.
What's my purpose? Oh.
You know what I mean? What are you laughing at, Rig?
Oh, the amount of times that question just came up.
What's this with in your life? Or just people?
No, it's just heard,
Yeah. Any
God's
religious
will is?
person has that question, what's God's purpose for
It's
me?
God's will for
Any
my life.
religious person. I was talking to one today.
Right. That's pretty much how you do it.
The species.
I don't think you're going to get an answer to that. So how about you just say whatever you want, and then let's say that's God's will for your life.
Yeah.
It's like, what is the will of God? Well, rejoice always. And again, I say rejoice in everything with prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving. Present your requests to God. Go and make disciples. Bless those who persecute you.
Yeah.
Do good to those who wrongfully use you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like
Love one another.
love one another. It's like, what's the will of God? You know,
Oh,
I don't know.
John
Why does it keep it such a mystery?
What work do I have to do? What country do I have to live
It's not as if it's in black and
Just
white.
live it. Ministry is the next person in front of you. Let's live it in the now. You know.
Yeah.
So it's and so, like, Chris, you spoke what you said last week. You know what I mean, and was obviously quite a revelation for you.
Like, which time did I? Which
Last Tuesday.
Yeah, I talked like
Discipling people.
You just basically the discovery of you joining the Lord in His purposes, and discovering His heart and His love for people, and at that point you're discovering the love part, and you're probably along the journey discovered the pain that comes with the love part, and the challenge and the need to pray. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You join. I think, I don't know what to pray for. I said, you join God. You join with God's purpose, and you'll have lots to pray for. You know.
Yeah, that's true.
And so there's an enlargement now. Each one of you, when you've stepped across the line, as often called, when you still, okay, Lord, I'm going to die to my desires and I'm going to embrace yours. Can you look back and observe the jump and the leap and the gear change that happened to you at that time? How would you describe that?
Yeah, for me.
And I don't know.
I think, like, for me, it's like first thing is the awareness of the high level of selfishness that you sort of operate with prior to that.
You belong to it. Yes, that's right.
It's like, wow, okay. But then it sort of keeps going. The more you sort of go in that, you look back and think, wow, okay, I thought I made progress.
We're going to meet people in heaven. We're going to go, we had no idea.
Yeah. I think for me that's pretty the first and pretty most consistent thing as well, is just seeing how much level of self is sort of, when you look back, that was at that stage, which is not accounted, because then there's too many areas now where I have to look back and it's constantly the same. So I'm like, oh great, how many more of those things are there?
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think that would be my observation from that point. It's just life sort of is too much about myself. So each time it sort of becomes less.
Yeah.
So there's more things to fill it with.
Every time from my perspective, I always see an expansion in the person. You see a gear change, you see a jump in growth, but you see an expansion. You start to see their potential. They start to move into their potential. They start to be, not just doing, but they start to be more than they were. And the potential of their life just before them now is much larger than it was. They're a bigger person. Their capacity has grown. Their character has grown. Their hunger has grown. In all ways, there's an expansion. So it's clearly just a bestowing of grace upon them, and it's such a dynamic in life as to never leave, never forget, because it's too critical for health and growth, for the person, let alone the future, let alone the people that benefit from it. So
how important it is that this is happening with people in our community, like, I mean, of course that it continues to happen in us, but as people come in and everything like that, like the minute that any of these pillars, like I'm just thinking of this one now, the minute that any of these pillars starts to be, not so important, like, that's all right, well, it just takes time to step over the line, that's fine. And it's true, I mean, there is growth in there. I mean,
that's a part of discipleship, is guiding the person to that place. Keep going, sorry.
Yeah, and you just want to encourage the person towards that. But with love and with grace, but it's just kind of knowing in love that, how beautiful it is. So therefore I'm going to pray, and therefore I'm going to encourage that person and urge them to live a life worthy of the calling that they've received. But with grace, knowing that, the Lord's the one that in the end does the work.
It's true.
So it's just that. This is that understanding and that love, that not saying that God doesn't want that for every person, He does. And we pray, and the Lord will do that work, and our desire is that every person steps over the line, basically.
Yeah. Can you see how they're pillars for a community to grow? Even if you have one without others, like if you try and deal with identity without the life of Christ, without true salvation, without a solidness in their walk, or with a solidness in understanding who they are in Christ and the strength of the covenant, or even if they're still self-absorbed and haven't really given themselves over to His purposes, no matter how you look at it, you can see how, like, that ain't going to float, They all hold together so well. And the last one, that Jesus is the head of His church, so we work for His dream. And this one we can be quite strong on, because you can be jealous because it's His headship. You can be jealous for, and He should have it. And He's not a figurehead. And He has expressed what He wants, how He wants us to be. And so we work for His dream. Now, what's the normal modern equivalent to that?
A pastor with a vision.
Mankind comes up with what they think He wants in their human wisdom, and do that because they want to do it for Him. They believe it is validated.
Rather than going back to the source and just following what He asks. It's almost like a new apprentice, and he decides, I'm starting my new job today, and I just went out, I bought $500,000 worth of fishing hooks, and he comes and says, boss, I got all these. And the boss says, son, we're a fish shop, we don't catch the fish, we just sell them.
If we ever need to catch them, I've got the stuff.
But just misalignment, without having no regard for misalignment, and this is where motive can be right, but the wisdom can be wrong. Because you're talking about well-meaning, God-fearing, zealous lovers of Jesus here. You're not talking about carnal men, but you are talking about carnal wisdom.
Just years of tradition.
Yes, and the safety of tradition. All of you are sort of breaking the moorings within yourself of the comfort and the consolations of group think mentality and a herd and a pack safety,
Yeah. The passenger.
being the passenger, that's right. Being the passenger in the car that's going somewhere. Now, and again on that other one about until his will becomes your will, then the focus of your life is fellowship on the basis of relational needs as undergirding a Christian life. So that elevates the need for church to be a social point of contact. Thus, man's institutions, you're quite happy for them to stay that way because it serves a carnal need.
Yeah, that's it.
In lots of ways.
It's about 8:30 the dot.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I just
You need
mentioned
to
to
be home at
Rosie.
8:30.
Oh, come on, guys.
You're
What's
late.
going on?
I know, we can keep going. I'm just thinking your
Obviously.
wife.
Yeah, I get
Did
it.
A sick
say-
wife at home.
But can you see how the 7 hold together?
Yeah.
We love
can
you,
see
Rosie.
how the modern equivalents
Are you
they
okay?
basically rob a lot in many, many ways.
Yeah.
And so what you have is very precious, not just for your own benefit, but also for those that come under your influence, and also for those that you meet. You know what I mean?
And I think that's why it should be the absolute necessity of having these things very much like well thought through within each of us, because in that way we can sort of pass them on and then sort of make the emphasis that those people, so they think those things through, so it's no longer, like as I mentioned before, it's no longer doing something because someone told me this is what I need to do, or this is how I'm
that's
supposed to do things.
Although we could
Yeah.
design a spreadsheet to do that.
I've said goodbye to spreadsheets.
Not a bad idea at all. Be efficient.
Very efficient. I know, man's ways solves one problem and creates 2.
Yes.
Yeah, I think just being well thought through, I guess, within all of us would help us pass that on to other people and sort of make the same emphasis for them to be well thought through. And
Especially when you realise that whatever growth is really going to come through you guys.
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
No pressure.
Yeah. I was actually thinking that there needs to be a verbal passing on, a verbal instruction, even things like valuing the presence of God in our midst and that kind of thing. We have heard teaching on that, how important it is that we value the Lord's presence and we're here for you, Lord. But if that hasn't been taught, then it could be that new people are coming in and they're valuing the presence of brothers and sisters, but
Yes.
not God in the midst.
And being aware of
God
that.
in us, like with us. Yeah. So
Yes.
just how important it is to teach people, to speak to people. Otherwise, how easy it is to go to a not carnal, but I guess you could say soul state where we're enjoying the soul realm.
Yeah, and or getting heady,
Yeah, that too. Yeah,
which is still the soul realm.
distracted. Yeah,
It is.
mind. Yeah,
That's true. And the same would be, and the lead on that would be a dropping off of spiritual gifts and seeing a functional disuse of spiritual gifts because you see no need or you haven't cultivated the valuing of that, and also obviously the Lord's presence, which I believe is where it springs from.
Yeah, no, for
So
sure.
I mean, to me, this is like just, I don't want to overwhelm you guys. It's a point of building foundations and then not just saying, well, we've got these things, these 7 things, we just shut up shop around these 7 things. No, you just be very holistic and mature. Part of maturity is being able to encompass a lot, see the value of things and still add things to it and become holistic and seeing how they all fit together, and yet still have a capacity to grow and to assimilate truth and reconcile it all together so that it grows in its volume and in its cohesiveness. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's just part of maturity as you walk on.
Yeah.
That you're still building foundations, and a lot of you are shifting into these foundations. They're becoming strong, not because this is true, but because it's like Jeremy. I know the significance in my life when I stepped across the line. I know the expansion. It's not talking theory. This happened to me.
Yeah.
That's what you want. This happened to me. I've realised the value of this in my own life.
Yeah.
Therefore, I want to pass it on.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to pass it on thoroughly too.
Yes.
Yeah.
And still add and grow.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, we'll let you.
Right, we'll leave it there.
Well, next week, where do you want to go?
5 minutes late.
We went through all 7.
We did go through all 7.
Yeah.
There is place not for. I think we've discussed it. From my point of view, it would be great to, if you wanted to go any deeper, is the interrelationships of them, but specifically people going away and digging deeper and bringing, like a few people bringing something to take us all deeper, rather than having a discussion on the night where you can only go so far.
Like in relation to what topic?
Well, it can be a relationship to these 7 pillars, or it can be a relationship to something that God's put on their heart where there's a hole for all of us, something to fill. I'm open. Do you think we've covered these 7 pillars thoroughly to the point where I think we're good with that now. I think we can really add to something else now. You're nodding, but you have to talk.
It's about
I'm thinking a lot about how to, I don't know if this is something I need to meditate on and then share next week, but how to actually, of course there is discipleship, which we can do, which is great, but the whole thing of, explicitly the value of these things being expressed in us. Like, of course, I can teach my disciple, and Jeremy can teach his disciple, which is great. But whether or not it's just an awareness or something, where we're all aware, and therefore when we're meeting together in a larger setting, we end up kind of basically just expressing it more in the sense of there's a unity involved of it. I'm not sure. I'm thinking about it. Maybe we can all meditate and bring whatever the Lord wants us to, not the Lord, but we can ask the Lord kind of in the sense of where we're at as a community in these things, or how we can encourage one another in these things as a community. I'm just thinking, for example, when we do meet, to explicitly be encouraging one another in these would be great. But maybe that's just my thoughts. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just trying to how that would functionally work out, and whether it's got enough meat and volume to fill a night.
No.
It could be something to bring. What would fill a night is you guys go away and say, okay, what have you got from the Lord, and what do you see, or can you seek the Lord and bring something that you feel like He's put in you and deposited in you to bring, as to how we are to be and where we are to go now in how we are together as a community and when we gather. How's that?
Yeah.
Plenty of scope in that.
Yeah.
And it's not as though like we're going to force anything on you. We just have to. I think as people bring things, and as people talk and relate, I think the mind of the Lord can become a little bit clearer for us. There's how to be together, be in community, how to grow, how to function together in different meetings. And where are our blind spots? It's a good one. None of us could say anything about that, really, could they?
If they're blind spots.
Correct. We'll just have an hour and a half silence. We'll just talk about blind spots.
That sounds good.
Sounds like a great plan.
Okay. Is that fuzzy or is it clear?
Going.
I like blind spot.
What are our blind spots?
So we're going. Everyone's going away.
How does the Lord want us to be?
Be, grow, in a different. We have different modes.
How does the Lord?
And there can be. Do we have a blind spot? Is there something missing that you see, and you bringing that? is still going to be helpful, whether it's on point or not. It's still helpful, you know. And I like that. I like you guys' way in doing that, because it brings you into a place of responsibility of owning this, and that will grow you all. Sounds good.
Sounds great.
All right.
We went really quick.
Yeah.
Really quick.
Bye.
Oh, we started a bit later. didn't we?
Bye.
Wasn't it really?